advice to help you with Regional Etude number 1 for 2020. The first thing I would advise you to watch out for are the staccatos in the first line and throughout the piece, but especially in the first line. You have a lot of places where you have staccatos and then no staccatos. The second measure is a great example of this. You have 2/8 notes, 3/8 notes with staccatos, and 1/8 note with no staccato at all. So make sure you get those staccatos nice and short, but at the same time make sure that last 8th note in the second measure is nice and long, actually leading to the third measure. The other thing also related to staccatos happens in the 7th and the 8th measures, 7th measure, where you have slurs leading to a staccato. It also happens in measure 10, where you have 2/16 notes to an 8th note that is slurred into. So you do not actually tongue these notes. Instead, you just make them short. Or that's the 7th measure. Finally, one thing that I found in practicing this piece, and hopefully will save you a lot of time, is in measure 8, where you have the A flat, F, D at the beginning of the measure. I practice this a lot of the time with trying to use a right hand A flat to a left hand F to the D. But when I tried to play this up to the tempo that's required for this, it never came out smooth. So I strongly recommend that in the 8th measure that you use a forked F for that particular F. That's not something I use very often, but in this case, I do use left F for the second F, but not for that first one. When you come to the 9th measure and you have the same 3 notes, they're slower. So there, you could use the right hand A flat, the left hand F. Strictly up to you. So I did it in that particular case, and I did it when I played. Hope this helps you. Some hints for Etude number 2. My first piece of advice would be to play the trills that happen in measure 4 and at the end on the slower side. It's a slow movement, so playing them really fast is kind of not characteristic of what you're trying to play. So what I suggest, going right before the one in the 4th measure, instead of, which sounds a little bit too much. Okay? The next thing you've really got to watch out in this one, it comes in the 5th measure, 5th, 6th, and next to the last measure. Actually, it's 4th. No, it is 5th. 5th, 6th, and the next to the last measure, where you have a rhythm with 30-second notes. Don't let those scare you. At this tempo, they're pretty slow. As are the 16th notes. So make sure that you're playing them slowly and not speeding up in those. And of course, at the very end where you have 8 16th notes together, you actually get to retard, as I did when I played this. The other thing to watch out for in this one are the note links in those same measures. So that when I just played in measure 5, you have a long and a short note. Then 2 long notes. That happens again in the next measure. So make sure that you have a nice long note for the first one. And then 2 long notes for the third of the set. That also happens exactly the same way in the next measure. And it also happens again exactly the same way 2 measures from the end. One other piece of advice is watch your dynamics. There are lots of them in this, and lots of crescendos and diminuendos. Hope this helps you. Etude number 3. In this etude, he uses lots and lots of eighth notes followed by triplets, triplet eighth notes. So you need to spend some time practicing doing the eighth notes versus the triplet eighth notes, because they're right next to each other, like in the very first measure. So feeling the 2 versus the 3. Just spend some time going ta 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 ta, and practice that over and over again until you're comfortable with it. You can even learn to play it one in one hand and one in the other. That might also help you get better at the 2 against 3 that happens in this. The next thing you need to really watch out for, this comes in the second measure. You have a piano measure here, but you have accents. So accents don't mean loud. They simply mean an emphasis, but this is within a piano, not a forte. So when you come to this, you've got to learn to do not always, but rather. So when you play it against everything else, you get again. So I wasn't really forte with those, but they were within the piano. The other thing that really helps in this etude is to make sure you're really good at your chromatic scale. You have to play a really good chromatic scale up and down in the fourth measure and 2 bars from the end. So, and at the end, and you want that to be as effortless as possible. So spend a lot of time with those chromatic scales. Good luck.